More George, a touch of autumn. Hello and welcome to Beechgrove Garden.
Now, this may be the last programme in the current series, but we've got lots to do.
Coming up, if you've planted small trees, how to get them ready for winter. The results are in, weighing up this year's tomatoes and cucumbers. And we get planted for Christmas blooms. Well, before all that, since I'm with the lopper from Joppa, we've got quite a job on here, haven't we, George? A lot of dying wood in this tree.
There is, and so I think we need to get in about it with the saw and the loppers. This is the Tibetan cherry, and what happens with these often is that after they get to a certain age, branches start to die back, and that's what's happening here. And it's easy to tell the old dead wood.
Well, you've got a beautiful contrast, haven't you? Look at the lovely, fresh, young wood there.
That's right.
And I think it's an obvious choice there, isn't it? That's dead.
That's dead,
This is
and
alive.
this is alive. It's almost as though somebody has polished this. I mean, this wonderful burnished copper look which you get on these, and with the sun on them, it's just absolutely fabulous.
It's one of these trees that you want to touch, I think.
Very tactile.
Anyway, here's a bit that is definitely dead, and I think, do we take a little bit of weight off it to start off with?
Take that off. I'll
Can you hold on to that? In fact, I think I need my strength for that. You know, actually, when it gets dead, it gets quite hard, the wood. I'll take this one off here.
Can you get that one?
Yeah.
Right.
That's it.
Now, could you grab it round that?
I can grab that.
Because the thing that we've got to do when we're pruning these things is, you know, dead, dying, crossing. That's what we want to take out first. And then stand back and look at the tree and see what you've got left. I don't think there'll be much to thin out once we've finished here.
There's a lot of dead wood.
Could you hold that?
Yeah, if I hold this.
And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take some of the, just do an undercut there.
That means then it doesn't rip, does it?
That's right. Yeah. Not that it's going to when it's a branch like that, but that's it.
And it will change the shape of the tree, won't it? But it will look a lot better.
Yeah.
When it gets dry, it's much harder to cut, isn't it? That's it.
Well, look at
That's that one.
Now,
so that would then be cut.
That's got to be cut right back in there. And then there's another one here, which needs to be cut back there, so that we've got just the young growth left.
And hopefully what will happen is it will start to sprout out some new shoots.
I would think so. I would think so. Now, you realise what I've said?
Yes.
Yeah.
And you're going to leave me to it?
I am. Good luck. I'll check up on you later.
No problem.
Bye. Having left Carol dealing with a mature tree and taking out some branches there with a bit of pruning, I've come over to the trees which I planted earlier in the series. And these were a series of trees which were to be used for small spaces, small gardens. This laburnum, which is here, is called Rocket. But if you look at it, it's more like a Catherine wheel. It's not going straight up. Because what happened was that leader there, you see that? That has died and fallen out. And what I need to do is to tie in a new leader. So I'm just going to tie that in. And the thing that's important about this is that we make sure that we just tie these things in loosely, OK? Because it's going to have to remain over winter. Before I go, what I will also do is I will check the ties on this tree to make sure that there's enough room between the stem and the tie to allow the plant to grow in the spring without it getting strangled. And if I look at it, right, so if I look at it, we'll see that that tie there, see that tie, that's quite loose, it's loose around the trunk, that's not going to strangle the plant at all, so that's what we want. I'm going to prune back these branches so that we remain, or we end up, rather, with a plant which has got an upright form. Now, it might look a wee bit severe, but, you know, this is the time to do pruning like this, when the plant is young, so that you get it into the shape that you want and you don't end up with having to take off big branches, as we did with the mature plant earlier on. So that's what we're after there, pruning it back like that. I'll even take that one back to there and take that one back to there. So now we have established this upright form, which is what we wanted originally. And next spring, that will take off. We'll not get so much flower, but that's OK. Then eventually we'll get flower in the years to come. So that's having re-established this at the point where the branches are small, we've got the pruning, we've got the shape right. I'm going to have a look at two other ones further down in this row. Right, I've come down to the tree that's at the bottom of the row, and this is Sorbus aucuparia autumn spire. And if you look at this one, it's got this wonderful autumn colour and these glorious yellow fruits. And these will be enjoyed by the birds over winter. And because of its shape, which it has retained, there is no pruning needed here at all. Look at this, the tie is secure as well. We can look at that, so that's always important to do. But then you come to a tree which you've just planted or planted earlier in the season, and you think, right, how do I know if it's taken? Well, look at the top of the tree and look for that junction there between the old wood, which you've got there, and the young wood. This is the young wood up here, and that growth, which can be anything up to 300, 400 millimetres, is an indication that the roots are active, that the roots have taken, and that this plant is growing and is well on its way. So that is going to be here for a few years to come. However, the Malus might need a bit of pruning. This is Malus admiration. And if you look at this, it's got these 3 branches here which are laden with fruits. And it would be a shame to cut these off at the moment. So I will leave these until the birds have feasted on them and stripped the fruit off, and then I'll prune them right back in to near the trunk so that we get this upright form, which is what we want. Now, you're off to Leven to have a look at Callum on his allotment for the last visit of the season.
This year on the allotment, I've had a real focus on fruit, especially with my plum tree here, and it's now time to see has it all been worth it. So there's a few ways to tell if they're ready or not. When you look at the plums, if they're nice, that sort of reddy, orange colour, they're full plump, then they're ready to go. If you go over and when you feel the plum, if it's firm, they're not ready to harvest. There should be a bit of give in the skin, and they should fall off quite easy. So what you want to do is if you put the tray underneath here, if any fall off, because they'll fall off quite easy, at least the tray's going to catch them. And the way you go to harvest is you just take finger and thumb and then just give it a nice sort of twist. See, that one came off easier there. Now, what's great about growing plums is not all the fruits will ripen at the one time. When you start picking the fruits, that'll be from the end of July up until September, depending on the variety. You'll need to start checking them every few days. You'll need to keep going through the tree and harvesting as they're ready. And the final way of checking if they're ripe and ready is, of course, tasting them. Oh, delicious. Well, the gladiolis have come to an end, but not to worry, it's time now to start thinking about next year. So we're going to get these lifted and we're going to store them throughout the winter. When they finish flowering, deadhead them, and then when the foliage starts to turn yellow, that's a sign, OK, let's start lifting them and storing them. So we've just got a wee hand fork here, and you want to come away maybe about 10 centimetres or so away from the corn, just so you don't damage and accidentally put the fork through the corn, and you'll just hold on to the corn and lightly tease it out, help with the fork, and just try and knock off some of the soil. There we go. And then you just want to cut this back to a few centimetres. Yeah, that'll do, just like that. Now, we're just going to put these in the seed tray now for storing them. Once I've got all these lifted, and then this tray will go into a dark, frost-free place for over the winter. And every 2 weeks, you want to come and check on the tray. Just so if one does rot, you then take it out the equation and the rest of them will be fine. And then next year, you'll plant them out and you won't need to buy any more gladioli, so you're going to be saving money, and that's what we like, isn't it? I know this may not have been the horticultural year we hope for, particularly when it comes to the weather. But you know what? We've still been able to go out and grow and do our hobby. And we've still been harvesting here and there. We've got to learn for this year. We've got to think about it over the winter. What did well for me? What didn't do so well? And put it into practice so we get a better horticultural year next year.
Since it's the last programme of the series, it's a chance for me to do a bit of a roundup on a couple of observations that I've been doing. And I want to start with the 8x6 greenhouse. And it's these two varieties of tomatoes. So we have Shirley, which is a well-known variety, and then I have a variety called Borna. We've got 3 plants of each. And Borna's meant to be a new, improved type of Shirley. And what it says in the catalogues is it should be heavier cropping and perhaps starting to ripen earlier. So it's quite interesting, the record we've had, because for a start the season, it's meant that tomatoes have actually not started to ripen particularly early. We didn't start cropping until the 5th of August. And Borna was just a couple of days in front of Shirley. And when it came to weights, and we've got weights until about the middle of September, Borna was about 2.5 kilograms, and Shirley was about 2.4, so not a lot of difference. So for me, it's all about tasting them as well. And a few of us did have a taste test, and we all came out with pretty much the same result. But Borna was a bit fleshy, and actually Shirley was a bit more juicier. So I'm afraid it was Shirley that won. Now, the other little observation I want to talk about, and I feel this is such a success story, is all about the cucumbers. Now, I can't explain it, because when I say about the weather with the tomatoes not cropping until August, we started our cucumbers on the 4th of June, which is really, really early. So that's fantastic news. And what I had was I had 2 plants of the 7 varieties grown in the border. So that was 14 plants. And I also had 1 of each variety in a pot. So I don't want to give you too many statistics, but all the ones in the border, would you believe it? In the end, we have cropped 486 cucumbers. So statistically, you would maybe think then in the pots, we should roughly have, say, half of that. Let's go 250. Well, we didn't. We only had 131. So they were happier in the borders, and I'm not surprised about that. Something in a container, much harder to water and feed it. Now, I'm just going to pick out the one variety that was most productive in the border. So we're saying 2 plants. The variety was Baby, that's this one here. And from the 2 plants, 101 cucumbers. I mean, that's amazing. So that's on average 50, I'm not going to say 50 and a half, it's 50 cucumbers per plant. And then back to flavour as well. We did taste all the varieties, and I have to say it wasn't just myself, but also Jennifer, our head gardener. We picked out Baby as our favourite. We said it was sweet and it was soft flesh, quite tender skin, and really good flavour. So why don't you have a go next year and grow some of these cucumbers? Now for a change, we're going to have a visit to a community garden, and it's in the heart of Aberdeen. The running of Bonnymuir Green is focused on biodiversity and making space for wildlife. It's an approach that's making a difference.
So we don't use chemicals, we don't use pesticides here in the garden. We try not to tidy up too much to create habitats and food for insects, particularly those that need spaces to overwinter. We leave the grass to grow long, and as a result, we found that grasshoppers have moved into the garden when they certainly weren't here before. We're really trying to create a wildlife haven here, right in the middle of Aberdeen City.
The original space here was gifted to the community in the 1920s as a bowling green. Over the years, the numbers dwindled, and the Bowling Green Committee were looking to sell the place for development. When the local residents got wind of this, after quite a protracted journey, they petitioned the Scottish Government for the right to buy, and this ground became the second inner city ground that was purchased through the scheme, and the bowling green was purchased by Bonnymuir Green Community Garden in September of 2018. We currently have 2 mornings where we garden with volunteers. Within the garden itself, we have a range of different areas, so there are lots of different jobs, and it's a great learning experience for people to come in. A lot of people have never gardened before or very little experience. So we're all able to grow together as we develop and expand the space that we have here.
I've been volunteering at Bonnymuir Community Garden for almost the last 4 years. Discovered it as a great place to get outside and to have a cup of coffee. And then I got involved with the garden, and I've been coming along most weeks since then. Today we've been trimming this willow arch. We're just by the children's play area. You probably hear them in the background. We planted it a few years ago just by putting in bare stems of willow, and they've grown up into this arch. It allows it to be a play area. Children can come and run through it and hide in it, and it seems to have been very popular. But it grows profusely, and so we've had to open up the arch to allow the kids to carry on playing here.
I've been a volunteer since 2020, and I've been on the board for a few years now. The space I'm sitting on right now is right in the middle of the green, and is what we call our orchard area. The most important thing about a bowling green is that it drains water very quickly, so the soil is very sandy, which means it doesn't have a lot of nutrients. So a lot of plants, and in particular trees, will struggle in these kinds of environments. So one of the ways to try to encourage the trees to establish themselves is to remove competition from their roots. So we are using these rings, in this case metal rings, around the roots of the trees to make sure that we can keep the roots of the grasses away, and we can use these kind of well-defined spaces as a way to add manure, water, leaf mulch, whatever we need to create a better soil, more nutrients, and keep the moisture levels more adequate.
Everything that we grow in the garden here at Bonnymuir Green is chosen by our community. We put out a survey every year asking people what they would like to see here. I think it's anything that can be picked and eaten straight away is the most popular. So the garden here, we operate a pick your own scheme. So anybody can come and pick some fruit and vegetables if they would like to, and if possible make a donation to the charity. It goes straight back into the garden, really, into growing for next year. So for the last couple of years, Bonnymuir Green has had over 20,000 visitors each year. And we have a huge range of people coming to visit the garden. So we get a large number of young families. The kids love playing in the garden, looking for bugs and beasties, and picking and eating fruit and veg as well.
The garden volunteers come to Bonnymuir on a Tuesday and Wednesday. I come up on a Tuesday morning, and I've been doing that for about nine months. And what I really enjoy, not only being outside in all weathers, really, but just seeing the changes in the garden over the seasons has been really interesting. And it's just a pleasure to be part of this wonderful community.
OK, George, I'm going to have to mention the word Christmas.
Oh, don't. No, please, please, please. But we have to plan.
We do, and we want to have a little bit of colour at Christmas. So one of the easiest things to do are the paper whites, the narcissus.
Yeah. Now, these are all in the garden centres now, and this is the time to buy them. Now, when I get them in September, I will plant them into a big pot, and I'll leave them outside. So they're left out, first of all, in the sunshine, and then they go into the shade. And what happens is that they will be in flower for Christmas and New Year.
OK, so that's quite interesting. But if you've got a warmer spot, you can actually have them flowering as quick as, what, about 6 weeks?
5, 6 weeks, and
absolutely
they'll be in flower.
Incredible.
Yeah.
So I think, you know, this is the traditional bulb bowl.
Yeah.
Well, nothing wrong with that. There's no drainage, but that's okay because we're using bulb fibre. Or you can have a bowl like this with a hole, but if that's indoors, you've got to have a saucer as well.
Well, if you don't have a saucer, you'll make a mark on the furniture.
Absolutely. And I like to do, with the compost, I've actually moistened it, and what am I going to do? The squeeze
The
test.
squeeze test.
So, look, we get a little bit of drainage there. It's not too wet, but that is going to mean that probably we're not going to have to water the bowls.
That's right. Yeah.
Little bit of compost into the bottom, place them around like this, and I'm just going to then add a little bit of compost on top, so you're not really covering them completely.
So just the noses of the bulbs sticking through, really?
Absolutely. So you've got a much easier technique there.
I've got a different way of doing it, and what I'm going to select are just one or two sort of narrower bulbs here, and I'm going to put them into this glass jar, as it were. Well, I could use a glass jar. This is a glass, an old beer glass, and all I'm doing is putting 3 into that, and these will sit. They could sit in the windowsill, and you'll enjoy the roots going down into the gravel underneath. That's glass that's underneath there.
You could use gravel, couldn't you?
Yeah, you could do gravel, and this is it also in a pudding bowl, just with some of the same material underneath. So that's it, and these will sprout away very, very quickly. And all I need to do here is just to keep that water topped up, just so that the roots...
Once the roots grow, yes, make sure, and you can see the water. That's the good thing about it, isn't it?
In this
so that's our Christmas thought about, but let's think ahead as well to next year and the year after.
So how far ahead are you thinking?
Well, I'm actually going for next year, and what I've got is actually some tree lupins, which I think could be really nice in the seaside garden.
Yeah.
I'm using these modules, and I thought I would just put, say, 2 into each of those, and, you know, they could germinate within just a few weeks.
All right, so these are quite quick.
They're very quick, and I would just add gravel onto the top and go into a cold frame.
Well, I've got something also for your seaside garden, and these are the seed heads of the said plant. This is Eryngium giganteum, Miss Wilmot's ghost.
Lovely plant.
Super thing. And when these are fresh and growing, they look like aluminium in the sunshine. They really glint. There's the seed there. And again, just like you...
You're just going to sprinkle that on?
Just a little pinch on the top of each one of those, because when these germinate, they produce a very long, thick taproot.
So those modules are perfect for that, aren't they?
Absolutely. This is a biennial plant. So we've got to save seed every 2 years of this, so that we get a good crop of plants. These will then be covered in gravel, and I'll put them in a cold frame where they'll get the cold. That will stimulate them to germinate, and they'll be ready for us to plant out, I would say, in the summer of 2026.
Absolutely perfect.
Planning.
Well, now's the time for some handy hints, and I would highly recommend that here we are, end of September, the nights are drawing in, the daylight hours are a lot shorter, so I really think it's a good idea to start removing the shading. And this is just a paint-on shading, so it's very easy, just with a brush, to rub it off. And the whole idea, really, is we've got those tomatoes in there, and I'm hoping if it gets more daylight and sunshine like this, we're going to get nice, ripe tomatoes.
We're often asked, when do you know that an apple is ready to harvest? Well, the first thing to look for is apples on the ground where they've fallen off naturally. Then the second thing is, if you take a fruit and just lift it upwards like that, it comes away easily in your hand. Now, what do you do when you've got lots and lots of apples? Well, you think about storing them. And the way that I store them is I take a piece of glossy magazine, something that was maybe a bulb catalogue or something like that, and I wrap each individual apple in that glossy paper. And what that does is that it separates each apple when I put them in the storage box, like that. So I'll just carry on doing that. But before you do that, make sure that the apple that you select is clean and doesn't have any disease. This is a variety known as Bloody Ploughman. And there we've got apple scab all over the skin of that. Now, that's only skin deep, and I can peel that and it's perfectly usable. But if I store it, there's a chance that rot will set in to these little spaces and the thing will rot in storage. So I'm not going to store that, I'm going to use it immediately.
Oh, George, is it a sign that we're getting older? Because I cannot believe this is the end of the series, the end of the programme. Unbelievable.
26 weeks ago, back at the beginning of April, first programme. Oh, and look at the season it's been.
It's been a difficult season, and not the first programme, but I remember programme 2, it was absolutely pouring hard. We were inside the whole time, weren't we?
Yeah, and planting potatoes, and that was the start of the whole growing season. So
Yes.
it's been really good.
So, you know, the weather was difficult. I think lack of pollinators was another sort of negative, and I do hope that we're going to get more pollinators next year. What about ripening of tomatoes? How have you done with that at home?
Oh, my tomatoes at home have been really, really slow. It's just been lack of sunshine, Carol. They've just not been there. But there has been successes. I would say that my brassicas were a big success at home. So
Okay.
that was good. And the apples have been good.
Well, talking about successes, I mean, let's straight away congratulate the gardeners here because they do such a wonderful job. And just look at this harvest. It's absolutely fantastic. I mean, what would you pick out?
OK, so we always think about doom and gloom, but look at this. I would go plums, pumpkins, figs and grapes.
I thought an allotment man, definitely, and they are wonderful.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to say, you know, it was a new project, the strawberry plot.
Right.
So that variety is flamenco. It is still fruiting. Some unusual sweet corn, or I'm going to call it popcorn, because the variety is
Okay.
Fiesta, and you're meant to use it as popcorn. And George, the flowers, I mean, although the sweet peas were late to perform, they're still flowering. The dahlias are looking good. What about your sweet peas
Well,
at home?
it's interesting, actually, Carol, because my sweet peas finished about a week or 10 days ago, and it's an indication of the difference between the day lengths this far north in Beechgrove and back in sunny Joplin. So there we go. Yeah. And have you mentioned your cucumbers?
Have I mentioned cucumbers, George? You know, I mean, over 600 cucumbers on 21 plants. That has to be the most successful growing of cucumbers that I have known in the time on Beechgrove.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah.
But here we go. It is pretty much the end of this series. But please don't be sad, because we are coming back in a few months' time. There's going to be a new mini-series, and it's all about Christmas. So, George, have you got your Santa outfit looked out?
I thought, Carol, that I was more of an elf than a Santa.
I was hoping that you were going to come down the chimney. Anyway, also, I think if you're a gardener, you're always planning ahead. So do remember that all of this series is on the iPlayer, and hopefully you'll find a few tips and hints and some inspiration for next year.
Yeah. So all from the Beechgrove Garden team, that's the wonderful team of gardeners in the background, our presenters, the crew behind the camera, and from us here and the viewers, of course, it's goodbye for now.
Goodbye.